Thank you, Grantmakers for Education. This is a real treat to be in a discussion with these two fine gentlemen and to have the opportunity to link what we do at Excelencia in Education, the reasons that we do it, the hope that we have for our work, with the power of these testimonials, with the authenticity of these kinds of stories, is for me personally enormously challenging and quite exciting. Excelencia in Education was founded in 2004 with a focus on the growth of the Latino community as an asset for America. In the echo of what we've just heard, I want to tell you a little bit more about why Deborah Santiago, our co-founder, and I decided to take this step. You heard in the introduction that I had the opportunity to work in government. It's a fantasy, it's an experience that I enjoyed. I say the word fantasy. I come from 15 years of work at a college, a University of Texas at Austin, where I cut my teeth on organizational change. I knew from those years that when you look at a place and you see a room, and the room is absent of anything, men, women, Latinos, blacks, that you don't see something that happens naturally, that you're seeing the byproduct of a whole series of decisions, perhaps either pro or against, but you're not seeing something that happens naturally. And my reaction to that as a student activist in my years at UT Austin allowed me to be in the right place at the right time when the university decided it wanted to do something. And I spent 15 years building islands of commitment and opportunity within the institution so that when I left in 1993, we were a place where people, Latinos and blacks in particular, would turn for their doctoral education and not only achieve their dreams, but become future faculty. Buoyed by that experience, I came to the wonderful city of Washington, D.C. for what I thought was going to be a 2-year aventura. I was going to have an experience in that fantasy. I was going to see how it's done in the nation's capital, and then I'd get home where I belong, which is Texas. It's been 16 years on my 2-year stay, and why do I stay? Because in the time that I've been in Washington, I see too often the need to make the kind of bridge that I will attempt to make right now between these stories, this truth, and what goes on every day in terms of policy decisions and budgetary decisions, so that that oneness that Father Boyle talked about really is the paradigm we use as a country. Because the themes of what he said are the themes that allow us to make common cause. But the structure, the process, the science, the policy, they are not easy paths. They do not allow the doors to be open wide. And they do not allow us to quickly go from the halls of government and the budgetary decisions to the kinds of needs, and most exciting, the kinds of possibilities that are before us when we look out on this great country and all our students and all our people. We at Excelencia believe that it is necessary to understand the distinctions, the differences, the trends, so that when we respond, we can do so effectively. At the end of each story, it is the same. We move towards the things that we value. We care about our communities. We take care of each other. But our ways of doing it are distinctive. And in the decision-making of Washington, of state government, of many of our large enterprises, the styles and techniques that we saw on display, the use of Spanish, the understanding of multiple family situations, are continuing to be treated in the conversation of non-traditional. Anybody who has looked at the data as it relates to education knows that that vernacular has to be checked at the door. It's not a matter of traditional or non-traditional. It's a matter of who are our students and how do our educational systems respond to them. So what we did in 2004 was take an experience of 3 years working in government, 24 federal agencies. The executive order had us responsible for educational attainment from pre-K all the way through graduate and professional education, and all of the aspects of work in government, and did a quick audit. If we were sitting in front of decision makers and wanted to get them quickly to the point of action, is there an organization that was there ready with what my colleague likes to call ignorance abatement? Is there information that allows someone who is brand new to the discussion of who are Latinos and how are they faring in American society, who could, in the course of an elevator, get what they needed to make that important decision, whether it was a vote in Congress or it was a decision at a board meeting? And we didn't find such an organization. So when a challenge is before you and you know that there's a need, you have a choice. And our choice was to put our shoulder to the wheel and to provide that information. So for the first 6 years of our work, what we've done is look at the trend lines for Latino participation in this country and marry that with the educational levels across this country. Now, I told you I come from Texas. In the year 2000, many seemed to believe and act as if Latinos are a brand new community. The 2000 census data, US News and World Report, the largest minority group in the United States. Okay, I'm glad that for some it's now up to speed. The information of the presence of the Latino community, strengths and needs, should be for all of us in this room and all that we work with, baseline givens. How do we look at this population and what is it that we unpack when we see this trend line? Very basic opportunities in terms of our country's human capital. Latinos are the second largest group in this country. We're very heterogeneous. We can have enormously fun and perhaps even some debates about this, but in terms of who we are and what comprises us and what our characteristics are, but in an aggregate, we are the second largest group in this country. More significant for a discussion about education, we are the youngest ethnic and racial group in this country. We have lower educational attainment rates, and regardless, we are the future workforce and civic leadership. Let's unpack those bullets. The second largest racial and ethnic group and growing, roughly 81 million people were added to the US population over the past 30 years. Latinos accounted for more than 40%. Between 1980 and 2009, the US population grew by 36%. Latino population more than tripled, increasing from 14.6 million to nearly 48.8 million. We are the youngest population in this country. Median age of Latinos is 27. Median age for whites is 41. Saying it another way, for every white adult over 65, there is one child. For every Latino adult over 65, there are 15 Latino children. Even more specifically, 1 in every 4 US kindergartners is Latino. This is a community that is here, thriving, ready to serve, and are our students. The lower educational attainment levels, I can't imagine that a member of Grantmakers for Education doesn't have your own nuggets, your own data. We at Excelencia in Education focus on accelerating Latino student success in higher education. So I'll take a view of what we look at, which is high school completion, college enrollment, and college success. There is much energy on this, many efforts underway. Here are a couple of shots. ACT CEO John Whitmore said just last week in DC, while more than 200,000 Hispanic high school graduates took the ACT this year, just 11% of them met or exceeded ACT's college readiness benchmarks. If we're talking about college readiness, it's the capacity of students who have a keen interest to make something of themselves in the world to be ready for the college experience. The College Board on Friday just released its version called Latino Edition of its college completion campaign, in which Excelencia is pleased to serve. In that work, 19.2% of Latinos who enter college complete college, while the national average hovers around 40%. What we will do at Excelencia is continue to track these numbers. We do so because of the magnitude of the Latino community, because of its potential in terms of its work going forward. But the issues, needs, and potential for the Latino community is very analogous to most of the students that we serve. And what we as educators, as policymakers, are looking at is an aspirations and attainment gap. The good news is that we have succeeded, and the comments that we heard bore testimony, we have succeeded in telling young people, all people, that to succeed in this information economy, that to make of yourself what you want to be requires a college education. While we can do more to provide college information, we no longer have to be talking around tables about social marketing campaigns to persuade students and their parents that college is important. That is established. But what we have is a gap in moving from that aspiration to that reality. And that is the work that we are about as we have this opportunity to be with you here today. So we look at the reality of who Latino students are, and we begin with some basic facts. The majority of Latinos in this country are US born. It bears repeating. For all that we must do on comprehensive immigration reform, and for all that we want to see achieved for the dreamers of our country, the majority of Latino students in this country are US born. The majority are US citizens. The majority are English dominant. And the majority are high school graduates. We must do better in terms of more students graduating, but at this moment, when our Congress is talking about getting serious about our budget, when we're talking about trajectories for 2012 that look daunting for most of us, when we experience state-level discussions about education, which quite literally, in the same way that this conversation has, pits education against the penal system, pits healthcare against education, we must build on success. And in looking at Latino students and the trend line for Latino students, the majority of us are high school graduates. But we must do more. And in doing more, this is where there is a dead-on intersection with the authenticity and clarity of what it takes to make change happen, with the commitment that we make to you in terms of looking at large data sets, providing them in straightforward profiles for you, and linking it to change. So walk with me for a moment through the profile of Latino students who go to college. The majority of Latino students are first-generation college goers. That brings with it enormous responsibility for all of us in education. We know that for students to thrive, they must feel like they belong, that somebody at the institution wants them, and they have a sense of where they're going. The very prayer that Father Boyle said that Bandit wanted to give to his daughter was because his daughter was going someplace they had never been. Bandit and his family had Father Boyle. I would imagine that Bandit's daughter had students who were peers and telling her what to do, had counselors and teachers who believed in her, but not enough of our students have that. And to ever think that in our systemic reform discussions, we get to the point where we figured it out, that it isn't personal, labor-intensive, then we are missing the very nature of this process of helping students achieve what they want. The majority of Latino students and the majority of students in many of our urban areas are first-generation college goers. Most of them are enrolled part-time, and we can have long and elaborate discussions about why that is and what it does to their educational experience. But for any of you who are involved with financial aid, I think that we have to be clear-minded about the reason that students choose to go to work while going to school. And as we look on the horizon for a world where we can adjust change, that we think about those employers who embrace the idea that they have students amongst their employees, and that we have learning environments in the work setting that allows these students to thrive. Equally important are institutions and community centers who bridge that dynamic. In the sober budgetary discussions that we are embarking on, any student who says they want to go and is willing to do what's necessary needs to be met with an innovative and expansive response, rather than being told, as they would at my fine alma mater, you have to be full-time, you have to be dedicated, or we can't help you. In this environment, to call a student who works and goes to school not dedicated is not naming the situation correctly. Latino students attend community colleges in large measure. Now, in the Obama administration, that has created great opportunities. Community colleges are having a wonderful marriage in terms of policy discussions, a recognition of their entrepreneurial spirit, the fact that they embrace the whole world of work. But at the same time, when you talk to students who go to community colleges, even today, most of them are saying they want careers that will require a bachelor's degree. So that age-old challenge that we've all been trying to tackle, how do we help students move smoothly from where they begin to where they want to be, has to be dealt with in the context of the large proportion of Latinos who go to community colleges. They enroll at colleges close to where they live. This particular phenomenon, if it's a new piece of information to you, hold on to it. This phenomenon of Latinos choosing to go to college within 50 miles of where they grow up is a dynamic that is with us and will stay with us. It has led to the creation of quite significant concentrations of Latino enrollment, and in fact, a federally funded program known as Hispanic Serving Institutions. For anyone who is looking at how to have impact in terms of college students, you need to know HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions, not because of their success with the US Department of Education in securing a Title V grant, but because of their success with Latino students. And while some of them are institutions that are actively building on a knowledge of how do you make connections with Latino students, how do you use Spanish language media, how do you build on community organizations that have deep inroads in the community, many of them are in the right place at the right time. If you are a foundation with a concentration of Latino community, Latino families, close to a post-secondary institution, you have in your portfolio the ready-made dynamic. Again, those of us who work in higher education know that that goes against the grain of how we talk about education. We want students to go everywhere. We want them to go to the best institution where they've been admitted. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, and of course I will tell her that. But at the same time, what this is about, what our common cause is the power and promise of education to have people live the lives that they wish. And that is what we have at our disposal. Latino students work off campus, and Latino students complete their degrees in times much longer than what we would imply by saying a 2-year degree and a 4-year degree. In policy circles, there is much discussion underway about what we're going to do to speed students along. I would imagine there are people in this room who lead such efforts. Think about those policy discussions against the backdrop of what we've talked about this morning. Who is it that we are speeding along and perhaps keeping away? And the reality of our discussion in terms of the country's future is we need everyone. We're no longer at a point where creaming is what we should do in terms of economics. We're no longer at a point where those who figure it out on their own and succeed on their own is all we need. We need everyone. The profile that I just gave you of Latino students is very similar to most urban students. I said before, the non-traditional language really needs to get checked at the door. We really must look at how effectively our traditional methods of the delivery of education have worked and hold on to those, but recognize those techniques, tactics, systems, and process are only serving a small proportion of today's students. And that is what we're here to do, to meet these students where they are and to deliver for them the map, the pathway to allow them to be who they want to be in the future. Last week was a particularly powerful week for us in Washington. And it was a roller coaster ride that I think is likely to be your daily experience. In the span of a week to 10 days, there was a wonderful report that came out from the Pew Hispanic Center about the increase in Hispanic college going. You saw it. That from one year to the next, 24% growth from 2009 to 2010 of Hispanic college enrollment. That's very good news. And that is something that we are pleased about and want to see maintained. The very next week, the Pew Hispanic Center released childhood poverty among Hispanics sets record and leads the nation. The roller coaster. Yes, we have made growth. We have seen an increase in college going. In the very same environment, in the very same communities where we see the aggregate effect of poverty in this economy hit Latino children to the magnitude that it does. Simultaneously, what we see as the end goal against what we see as a trajectory. That is the space, that is the agenda, that is the place where we work together. In Excelencia's work, we believe in the future of not only our country, but the capacity of those who work hard to meet their goals and to aggregate our efforts to succeed. One of the ways that we manifest this is an initiative called Examples of Excelencia. Created in 2005 and structured as a campaign, it is designed on an annual basis to ask everyone to reflect on what works. What works in your community? What is having a positive effect at the associate, baccalaureate, and graduate level in terms of Latino student success? There are other ways you can conceive such a structure. We could make it your classic awards program. We could run it through a committee of the most esteemed individuals in our country. We have a very good selection committee. We could do it in many different ways. We have chosen a campaign because what we're trying to do, and I am trying to do in talking with you right now, is to bridge the sober statistics with the exciting opportunities that we know are there one-on-one. What we are doing is saying, yes, there are challenges. And in policy discussions, we talk way too much about them. There are sober statistics, which we hold ourselves accountable for and should never let up on. But simultaneously, there is enormous opportunity. And in this moment of growing solutions, the solutions are tender. They're fragile. Within institutions, they are oftentimes supported by your good foundations. They're outside the norm of the institutional investment. They are efforts which are within academic units, programs and departments that maybe are not even necessarily focusing on Latino students, but because the people who run them are aware, awake, they're paying attention to who is at their institution. And if they're in the chemistry department, in a place that has a lot of Latino students, and there are no Latinos in the chemistry, they say something's going on. And they make efforts, specific direct efforts, to be that bridge for the students that could be and the students who are there. This initiative, Examples of Excelencia, has since 2005 conducted national call for nominations. This year, we received a record number, 195. One was recognized at each level. 17 were acknowledged as finalists, and all of them who have risen to our attention, being cross-referenced against performance data and examined for what they do, are in a database called Growing What Works, which is available for your use however you see fit. But I say campaign because it is a campaign to move from the overview of the current status of education for Latinos as an aggregate, for the disenfranchised, for those who have not had an opportunity. It is a campaign to build on that strength and to move it towards solutions. Since we're getting to know each other, the one final thing I would say to you is that we are proud to have, almost from our inception, a connection with Grantmakers for Education. Our efforts were launched with an effort with Latino elected and appointed officials, Hispanics in philanthropy, that was very macro in its design, designed to look at how do we leverage what we know, deploy it quickly, and hold ourselves accountable for those results. In 2004, that's how I met Chris. And in the years that you have gone forward, so have we. My objective in spending this time with you today is to make clear some of the on-ramps. There are many. But the common cause that together we address is to hold ourselves accountable for the impact that we provide. In the work that we'll be doing going forward, we have an initiative that joins the ranks of those who are making this argument at the most macro level, college completion as a means for this country to thrive. The initiative is called Ensuring America's Future by Increasing Latino College Completion. It has the classic tools that you can anticipate from an organization like ours. But it is at its core the bridge between those discussions about the potential of our country and the tactics and practices which make the difference. I hope if this information is new to you, it piques your interest. But what I wish for us as a community of activists is that we reflect on the circle, because that is what it takes. Compartmentalizing, as any of us do, to try to get massive tasks done is fine. We have to do it. What do I have to do this week? What's my to-do list? How do I get it done? Rarely, though, do we have the kind of moment that this session has provided, where we attempt to connect those dots, where it's appropriate to talk in policy and large-scale numbers and spirit and God and one. That is how I interpreted the call that you have made for your conference. That is how I think of Grantmakers for Education when the call comes in to come to Los Angeles and be with you. I am excited by what lies before all of us, not only for this conference, but our work going forward. And as I said when I began, I'm honored by this opportunity, but I must say thank you to Grantmakers for Education for the opportunity to share this panel with these fine gentlemen. Muchísimas gracias.